Hello YouTube world and welcome back to the channel. I wanted to just do what I call a random sit-down rant, where once in a while I don't just talk necessarily about a video game or showcase a game or talk about wrestling or a little bit about politics or religion. I just randomly babble about something that piques my interest. So I saw on Tech Radar, yes, I am looking at my monitor, ultra settings, how 8K TVs are going to transform gaming. The future is bright. And so this is a bit of a rant, like a bit of a babble discussion, if you will, and I do want to keep this polite. I don't want people getting nasty down below in the comment section, even though I might be very critical about what I'm about to say. When it comes to 4K gaming, the whole 60 frames a second, and you know, you'll have your PC elitists. Like, I have a gaming PC, good for me. I don't know how many more years it's still going to be considered a gaming PC. I've been fortunate to save up my money for a long time. I have all the consoles, the Switch, the Xbox, PS4 Pro, 30 frames a second, good for me. When it comes to the whole 30 to 60 frames a second, this is going to be like a gaming rant. I think I'm going to call it like 4K versus 30 frames versus 60 frames, all the different settings. When it comes to the whole 8K, I think it's a waste. Yeah, I know, it's a bold statement because there's a lot of people that are going, oh, he just said it. 4K gaming, I'm kind of cool with. Here's my thing. I would rather 1080p, solid 60 frames a second, than having 4K at 30 frames. Or the fake checkered rendering, whatever you want to call it, upscale, okay, at like 30 frames. I'm not too sure if the Xbox One X can do 4K at 60 frames. Probably not true 4K at 60 frames. That would be pretty insanely powerful. Anyhow, let's say that it can. Fine. But not all games, I can almost guarantee you, without researching it on Google right now, will be able to do 4K at 60 frames. That like takes some serious horsepower. Now, the whole 30 frames versus 60 frames, okay, fine. I'm okay with 30 frames. When I play a PC game, like World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2 or the odd other game, and it's at 60 frames, yeah, I do notice the difference, but I don't sit there and go back on my console and go, oh, this Forza Horizon 4 on my Xbox One S. Oh, I don't know if I can do this 30 frames. This is garbage. I have no issues with it whatsoever. People are going to think I'm nuts. I actually sometimes think that 60 frames is too much. Yes, I just said that. Sometimes I find it jarring. Is that the term? Sometimes I find like, it's like, holy cow. It's almost too much. I like it, don't get me wrong. I guess what I'm getting at is everybody's pushing 4K, 8K. I'm even telling you that even though I don't mind 30 frames, never mind 4K at 30. Give us 1080p at 60. Have you seen the graphics on the Xbox One and the PS4 over the last half decade of their lifespan? The graphics have really increased. Look at Red Dead Redemption. I'm playing that on an LG 43-inch TV that's about half a decade old, 1080p, and it's beautiful. But I play on my PS4 Pro just for the little extra horsepower. I know some people are probably going, oh my god, he's got a PS4 Pro on a 1080p screen. I actually, for a while, had a PS4 Pro on a 720 Insignia television, and I loved my picture. I thought it looked great. I could tell the difference, but on a 32-inch screen at a certain distance, it wasn't night and day. Like, it was there, but I wasn't snob enough to be like, you know what, I'm not doing this. So why are all these people pushing the 4K? Here's what I want to get at, and I hope you guys and girls agree with me. Do you not agree with me that, here's a scenario I'm going to give you, and there are some 720p TVs with HDR, and I think now that I said HDR, some people are going to know where I'm going with this. I would rather see 1080p, hell, 720p, whatever, at full 60 frames a second with HDR rather than 4K. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as the making of this video right now today, January the 11th, 2019, there are next to none, if any, there are no 4K monitors. I guess we're jumping into PC gaming for a second. 4K monitors with HDR. I'm sorry, if you go from 1080p to 4K and take away the HDR, I've done it, so I can talk shit. I don't find there's a huge difference. Going from 720p to 4K, yeah, I notice it, and a lot of people will be like, maybe you need to get your eyes checked. No, I got my 4K goggles right here. I wear these sometimes just because I have a very mild astigmatism, and things are a slight tad blurry, but they look amazing. I don't even actually really need these. My vision has actually gotten better over the years, and that's another story for another day. But I don't really get why they're pushing all this and why they're not making 1080p TVs at with HDR. There's a 720p, is it an LG with HDR? That's at Best Buy, at least in Canada. And when you're on a smaller screen, I'm sorry, like if you're on a 27-inch monitor or 32-inch monitor, I'm not saying you can't see the difference. What I'm saying is when you're going from 720p to 1080p, you're not ripping your eyes out going, oh my god, what is this crap? You're not. And if you are, well, then you're a snob and you belong in the PC elitist snob group. You know those people. But yeah, so that's basically my rant. I just don't understand pushing from 4K to 8K. 4K was already like, okay, I get it. It's like quadruple 1080p and it's got HDR. But I promise you the HDR is making a way more drastic difference to your picture than the 4K is. Because you walk into Best Buy or the Brick or whatever store you people have in the States or wherever you are in the world watching me right now, I'm in Canada, and you look at a 1080p display and then a 4K display, chances are the 4K display is going to make you go like, whoa, but it has HD frickin' R. And I promise you, if you look at a 4K monitor for gaming, PC gaming, or just anything that's 4K, because I promise you 99% chance there's not going to be any HDR, and if there is, they're like a prototype monitor, or they're super rare, or they're like $3,000. There were some before. I think Dell had a super IPS HDR 4K monitor, but whatever. Especially for PC gaming, I'm repeating it again. What the hell is the point of 4K? I understand more people that want to push the whole 144 hertz thing, because I will admit, like when I play World of Warcraft or Guild Wars, I actually have throttled my game at 30, and yes, I'll admit, if I can crank it up to 60 again, I will. When it comes to my consoles, though, like I said, honestly, there are some games that run at 60 frames, like the odd one, and I do appreciate the 60 frames. I'm not saying that's a gimmick. I'm saying 4K alone is a gimmick. I think HDR is the much bigger game changer. And 8K, I think, is almost going too far. Like, I really don't see the point. If you could get 8K, HDR, 60 frames a second, that would be something. But come on now, how many years are we away from that? Until the content is able to produce that on a console or a computer? We don't even have HDR on monitors. I've already said it like 10 times in the last like 8.5 minutes. So I don't understand where this is going with the technology. So I say 1080p can still be very, very, very much relevant. Red Dead Redemption 2 is my go-to prime example that you can have an absolutely astonishing looking game. Again, I'm playing on a half a decade old LG 43-inch 1080p display, and when I play Red Dead Redemption 2, oh my lord, like the lighting and the shadows and the you get what just the whole picture, it just looks amazing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I couldn't even imagine it with HDR. I think my eyes would explode from the eyegasm. See what I did there? It wouldn't be able to handle what it sees. That I can understand. And a quicker frame rate. Fine, I get it. Even though I admitted to you in my video 30 or 60 is like whatever, like I'm happy with both as long as they're stable and there's no frame dips. When I play Guild Wars or World of Warcraft, I can be sitting at like 130 frames a second. And I know there's people rolling their eyes saying, you can't tell the difference, and there's some that swear by it, like when they have their 144 hertz monitors. You would need 144 frames, obviously, to have that, and some people swear by it. I'm a little bit more, I don't know, and yes, I have tried it, but I'm also doing 150 frames, or 130 to 150 frames on a 60 hertz panel, so that may skew my thoughts on it. I have to admit, I don't think I've tried a game at 130 to 150 frames on an actual screen that's 150 hertz that can actually like handle that refresh rate or whatever. I'm not saying that's a gimmick, but sorry, 4K, 8K with no HDR and no stable frame rate, still stuck at 30 frames. What the hell is that? That's console stuff. We're improving the graphics or the resolution before we're improving the steady frame rate. And I think people may agree with me. I don't know how many times I've said this now because I rant a lot. And as you can tell, I'm not reading from a script here. This is all off my crazy head. I think people will agree with me that as much as graphics are amazing, like resolution and all that, that people would appreciate a more stable frame rate or a higher frame rate rather than increasing the resolution. 1080p at 60 frames, do you agree, is more desirable than 4K at 30? Take away the HDR, though, for a minute, because that's kind of unfair, because 4Ks will generally have HDR, and obviously that'll make the picture like, wow. But even at that, would you rather 30 frames, 4K with HDR, or 1080p with 60 frames? Now, if I'm asked that, I have to admit, yeah. If it's stable 4K 30 frames with HDR, I have to admit that's good, obviously. I won't go any lower than that. But if I could choose, like I said, I would much rather 1080p, 60 frames with HDR. I think HDR is the big thing versus 4K. Because 4K, you guys know this, that's watching this, it takes a hell of a lot more horsepower to run 4K than it does 1080p. So let's crank up the frames. Let's have better stable frame rates or even higher frame rates up to 60 instead of this 30. Unless it's stable. Like I said, 30 frames, 4K with HDR, fine. But why aren't we making more panels that are 1080p? I don't think 1080p is dead in the water. I don't think those TVs are obsolete yet. No frickin' way. I don't think we're quite there yet. And like I said, if you... At least in Canada, if you go to a lot of stores and you buy a 720p TV, you can barely buy a 32-inch TV that's 1080p. They exist, but they're usually not all that popular. There's like maybe a Sony and a Samsung, but for the most part, they're 720p, and there's a reason for that, because it's not as big, it's not as drastic. Once you hit the 43-inch mark, yeah, I'll admit, it makes a bigger difference, obviously, right? Because now you're stretching out that bigger picture, the DPI, the dots per inch, or whatever, the pixels per inch, PPI. Yeah, it'll be more noticeable on a bigger screen. So I've just ranted for, oh my goodness, almost 14 minutes on pixels and resolution. There's no way anybody's watching this whole video. Just a crazy bald old man ranting on about technology and, you know. But yeah, the point of the video, I needed to get this off my chest. I don't really have any friends. YouTube is my friend. People watching. 1, 2 people, 20 people, whatever. That's my target audience. Those are my friends. Comment down below if you want to about what would you prefer, a higher frame rate or a higher resolution. So again, would you prefer 1080p with 60 frames and HDR, or would you prefer 4K or 8K with like 30 frames a second with HDR, right? And if you, so there's that question, and what you think about pushing 8K when we don't even have 4K at 60 frames stable. Like, we're nowhere near that I'm aware of. So anyways, as usual, for the people that know me, you know it's coming. If you liked the video, you give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, you give it a thumbs down. and I'll make sure that you will never have HDR or anything above 20 frames. That's it. No HDR for you, ever. That to me is painful, because HDR is amazing. 4K, anyways. If you want to subscribe to the channel and join the fun, well, of course, that would be great. But if you don't subscribe, that's perfectly fine. Thanks for stopping by anyways. Take care, boys and girls, and I shall see you all in the next video. Take care now.